For as long as humanity has existed, Earth has always been a target for those who seek to conquer, destroy, or enslave. Alien invaders had attacked before, each time more powerful and more technologically advanced than the last. Yet, humanity always found a way to survive, to adapt, and to fight back. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. This time, humanity was not facing just another alien force, it was about to face an ancient race that had seen and conquered galaxies. The Zorathians were unlike any species Earth had ever encountered. With technology so advanced that it seemed almost like magic, the Zorathians had no equals in the known universe. Their biology was engineered for immortality, their bodies could regenerate, heal, and endure anything. They believed they were invincible, untouchable, and that nothing in the universe could defeat them. Their strength, their technology, and their pride made them think that they were the ultimate beings in existence. They had traveled through the stars, dominating countless civilizations and leaving only ruins behind. For centuries, the Zorathians had ruled, expanding their empire across many galaxies. They had destroyed entire civilizations, enslaved weaker species, and harvested the resources of countless worlds. But even with their unimaginable power, there was one thing they had never done: they had never encountered a species like humanity. Earth was a relatively young planet, but its people had something no alien race had anticipated: courage, innovation, and the will to fight against impossible odds. The Zorathians had their eyes set on Earth now. They believed it was a world full of valuable resources, ripe for the taking. They thought they could invade and conquer it without breaking a sweat. After all, who could possibly stand against them? They had watched Earth from afar for years, analyzing the humans' weaknesses and preparing for a swift, overwhelming attack. The Zorathians were ready to unleash their fleet and wipe humanity from existence. However, unbeknownst to them, there were a few human scientists and military leaders who had been monitoring the stars, aware of the dangers lurking in the dark corners of the galaxy. These individuals had been tracking the Zorathians for months, deciphering strange signals and noticing patterns in the stars. They knew something was coming, but they couldn't be sure when. As the Zorathian fleet drew closer to Earth, they scrambled to prepare a defense, knowing they didn't have much time. The military was on high alert, but it was too late. The Zorathian fleet arrived faster than anyone had expected. Huge warships, shaped like massive, sleek predators of the sky, appeared in Earth's orbit. These ships were covered in layers of metallic plating, glowing with a soft, menacing light. They resembled the very image of death, and as they came closer, the world trembled. The human navy, usually well prepared for a fight, found themselves outmatched. The Zorathians had advanced cloaking devices that made their ships nearly invisible to radar, leaving Earth's defense systems blind. The humans could do little to prepare for the oncoming storm. They were, for the first time, truly outclassed by an enemy with far superior technology. But despite the overwhelming odds, humanity wasn't without hope. Hidden away in a small underground research facility, a group of brilliant scientists, led by Dr. Alina Hayes, had been working on a secret project. They had discovered something that could potentially turn the tide, something so unexpected that even the Zorathians hadn't seen it coming. Dr. Hayes and her team had been studying the Zorathian technology, looking for weaknesses, and they had found one. A small, but crucial flaw in the Zorathians' advanced systems that could be exploited. But time was running out. There was no guarantee they could finish the project before the Zorathians struck. As the Zorathian fleet moved into position, the humans were forced to act quickly. The world's military leaders and scientists came together to form a plan, a last-ditch effort to save humanity from total annihilation. Their plan was risky, but it was their only hope. They had to unleash everything they had to fight back against the Zorathians, and they had to do it soon. The project wasn't ready yet, but they had no choice. The clock was ticking. As the Zorathian fleet entered Earth's orbit, they issued a chilling warning. Their leader, the Supreme Zorathian Lord, sent a broadcast to Earth's leaders, demanding unconditional surrender. He spoke in a voice so cold and calculating, it sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to live. Resist, and we will erase your world from existence. The broadcast echoed through the airwaves, a clear message of domination. The humans watched helplessly as the massive Zorathian warships loomed over their cities. There seemed to be no way out. But then, something strange happened. Just as the Zorathian ships prepared to fire their weapons, Earth's radar systems picked up a mysterious signal. It wasn't from the Zorathian ships, this was something entirely different. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The signal was coming from a group of cloaked ships, human-made ships that had been hidden in the shadows. These ships, unlike anything the Zorathians had ever encountered, were armed with advanced technology that could disrupt the Zorathians' cloaking devices and give the humans a fighting chance. The Zorathians had never seen anything like this before. The signal was a mystery to them, something that didn't belong in their knowledge of the universe. They knew they were facing an enemy they had underestimated, and now, they were about to find out just how dangerous humanity could be. As the invisible ships emerged from their cloaking fields, humanity's last hope revealed itself. The Zorathians, confident in their superiority, were stunned. The humans had developed technology that even their ancient enemies couldn't comprehend. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a challenge to everything the Zorathians believed. The battle for Earth had just begun, and humanity was ready to prove that even an immortal enemy could be defeated. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, an ancient race of immortals versus a species that had just begun to unlock the full potential of its own ingenuity. The Zorathians had come to conquer, but humanity had come to fight. The Zorathians, with their supreme technology and overwhelming power, believed they were invincible. They thought that nothing in the universe could ever challenge them, especially not a primitive species like humanity. Their arrogance was their greatest weakness. They failed to understand one crucial thing: humans don't surrender. Even when faced with certain death, humanity will fight back with everything they have. As the Zorathian fleet hovered above Earth, the human military and scientific communities scrambled to prepare for the worst. The weapon they had been secretly developing, the cloaking device, was their last hope. This device wasn't just a tool to hide from the enemy, it was far more than that. It allowed humans to detect the Zorathian ships, even those hidden behind their cloaking technology. It was a breakthrough, and the world's last line of defense depended on it. Dr. Alina Hayes, who had been the mastermind behind the device, stood alongside the military leaders, watching as the cloaking system powered up. The anticipation in the air was thick. They all knew that this was their one shot at stopping the invaders. With the device operational, Earth's radar systems could now pinpoint the Zorathian fleet's exact location, allowing the human forces to track and target their enemies with precision. The first strike came quickly. A small, specially trained group of human pilots launched a surprise attack on a Zorathian warship, a massive, heavily armored ship designed for long-range destruction. The Zorathians had thought it was impossible for anyone to catch them off guard. They were wrong. As the human fighters flew toward the warship, their cloaking devices kept them hidden from the enemy's sensors. The human pilots, well-trained and full of determination, launched their weapons with deadly accuracy. The first hit struck the Zorathian ship's engine room, causing an explosion that lit up the sky. It was the first victory humans had achieved in the battle against the seemingly unstoppable Zorathian forces. But the victory was short-lived. The Zorathians had not come unprepared. They quickly adapted to the human tactics and launched a devastating counterattack. Their warships unleashed their full arsenal of weaponry. Laser beams so powerful that they could destroy entire cities in seconds. The Zorathians' next move was to wipe out the human forces before they could regroup. The counterattack was swift and brutal. One by one, human fighters were shot down, and military bases were obliterated by the Zorathian firepower. The human soldiers, who had been ready to die fighting for their planet, now found themselves facing an enemy that seemed invincible. But despite the overwhelming odds, humanity's spirit remained unbroken. In the chaos of the battle, Lieutenant Marcus Kane and Dr. Alina Hayes found themselves at the front lines, fighting side by side with the soldiers and civilians. Kane, a battle-hardened military leader, had seen death countless times, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Zorathians' laser weapons were unlike anything he had ever seen, cutting through buildings, vehicles, and soldiers with ease. Yet, even as the enemy's attacks rained down, Kane's resolve only grew stronger. He would not let his people fall without a fight. Dr. Hayes, though not a soldier, had proven herself just as valuable. Her scientific genius had given humanity the edge they needed, and now she was using her intellect to help coordinate the defense. Together with Lieutenant Kane, she provided critical support, giving soldiers vital information about the Zorathian fleet's movements. But no amount of technology could shield them from the devastation unfolding around them. As the battle raged on, Earth's major cities began to fall one by one. The Zorathians unleashed their laser beams, destroying everything in their path. New York, Tokyo, and London, once thriving metropolises, were reduced to ash in moments. The death toll mounted, and humanity's hope seemed to be slipping away. The people of Earth watched in horror as their cities crumbled under the Zorathians' relentless assault. But there was something the Zorathians hadn't accounted for. Despite the destruction, despite the losses, humanity's survival instinct burned stronger than ever. The more they were pushed to the edge, the more they fought back. Each city that fell only fueled their desire for revenge. The human spirit was unbreakable. As the Zorathians continued their attack, a strange and terrifying realization began to set in among their ranks. They had never encountered an enemy like this before. The humans were not like the other civilizations they had destroyed. Despite all their advanced technology, the Zorathians couldn't comprehend the one thing that made humans different: their relentless will to survive. The Zorathians, used to seeing entire species bow before them or perish without resistance, found themselves facing something new. The humans weren't afraid of death. In fact, they seemed to embrace it, knowing that their fight was their only hope. This drive to protect their home, to preserve their future, turned every soldier, every civilian, into a warrior. They fought not just for survival but for the idea of a future where they could continue to live in peace. The Zorathian leaders, who had once thought of themselves as gods, now faced a reality they couldn't ignore. Humanity was not a species that would kneel before them. No matter how many cities they destroyed, no matter how many soldiers they killed, the humans just kept coming. The Zorathians were beginning to realize that they had underestimated their enemy. As the humans fought back, it became clear that their will to survive was far stronger than the Zorathians' technology. The humans were not just defending their world, they were fighting for their very way of life. This was not just a battle for land or power, it was a battle for the soul of humanity itself. With each passing minute, the battle grew fiercer. Lieutenant Kane and Dr. Hayes continued to lead the charge, coordinating with the remaining military forces and civilians to strike back against the invaders. They were determined to make the Zorathians pay for every life they had taken, for every city they had destroyed. Despite the overwhelming odds, the humans had something the Zorathians didn't: heart. It was the human spirit, the desire to protect their families, their homes, and their future, that kept them going. And it was that same spirit that would one day turn the tide of the war. As the battle rages on, the Zorathians are forced to confront a shocking truth: the humans will not back down, no matter the cost. Despite their superior technology, despite their seemingly invincible power, they can't break the human spirit. The more they fight, the stronger the humans become, and soon, it's clear that the Zorathians' greatest mistake was ever underestimating the strength of humanity. As the war against the Zorathians raged on, Earth's top scientist, Dr. Alina Hayes, discovered something incredible, something that could change everything. After months of research, Dr. Hayes uncovered the truth behind the Zorathians' immortality. The alien race's seemingly invincible nature was not a result of their biological superiority, but a highly advanced energy system, deeply tied to quantum mechanics. Dr. Hayes realized that the Zorathians' immortality was maintained by a unique quantum lattice, an energy field that continuously reset their bodies, effectively allowing them to live forever. This lattice was not confined to just their home planet, it was spread throughout the galaxy, intricately woven into the fabric of their entire civilization. The lattice fed directly into their technology, ensuring their survival and giving them the power to dominate countless worlds. However, Dr. Hayes also discovered something crucial: this quantum lattice, which had been keeping the Zorathians alive for centuries, was vulnerable. She and her team learned that if the humans could somehow destroy the main source of this quantum system, it would sever the flow of energy that kept the Zorathians immortal. Without it, their bodies would begin to age, deteriorate, and eventually die. The Zorathians' most powerful weapon, immortality, could be destroyed in one fell swoop. This was humanity's chance to defeat their seemingly unstoppable enemy. But there was one significant problem: the quantum lattice was housed inside the Zorathian mothership, a massive, heavily guarded vessel that was almost invincible. It was equipped with the most advanced defense systems humanity had ever encountered, and getting inside would be a near impossible task. The Zorathians had long since made sure that no one would ever be able to disrupt their life-sustaining technology. Despite the odds, Dr. Hayes knew this was the only way to save Earth and the entire human race. She brought the discovery to Lieutenant Marcus Kane, and together they devised a plan to infiltrate the mothership and destroy the quantum lattice. It was a suicide mission, but the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The plan was set in motion. Dr. Hayes and Lieutenant Kane, along with a small team of elite soldiers, made their way to the Zorathian mothership in a stealth spacecraft. Their mission was clear: find the quantum lattice and destroy it, no matter the cost. As they approached the massive alien vessel, their cloaking devices kept them hidden from the Zorathian radar, allowing them to get closer than anyone thought possible. The moment they docked with the mothership, the tension was palpable. The ship's inner corridors were dark and quiet, but it was only a matter of time before the Zorathians would notice their intrusion. They had to move quickly. The team navigated through the ship, staying in the shadows to avoid detection. Dr. Hayes, using the information she had gathered, led the way, knowing the exact location of the quantum lattice. But their stealth would not last forever. As they ventured deeper into the ship, they encountered the first of many obstacles: Zorathian AI-controlled robots. These robots were designed to protect the mothership from intruders, and they were armed with advanced weaponry. They moved with precision, scanning every inch of the ship's interior, hunting for the human intruders. The moment they detected movement, they closed in with terrifying speed. Dr. Hayes, who had been part of the mission's planning, used her knowledge of the ship's security systems to disable some of the robot's sensors. But their cloaking devices wouldn't hold forever, and the group had to act fast. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared throughout the ship. They had been spotted. What followed was a heart-pounding series of close-quarters combat. Marcus Kane, known for his unshakable resolve in battle, led the charge. He drew his weapon, a plasma rifle, firing at the incoming robots. The weapon's blasts struck with deadly precision, disintegrating the robots in flashes of blue light. But the robots kept coming, relentless and merciless. Kane and his team fought with everything they had. Every soldier was trained for combat, but facing these advanced AI-controlled machines pushed them to their limits. The robots were faster, stronger, and more efficient than any human adversary they had encountered before. Their cold, calculated movements made them almost impossible to outmaneuver. But the humans had something the robots didn't: heart. Kane fought fiercely, dodging laser blasts and using his strength to dismantle robots in hand-to-hand combat. The ship's tight, metallic corridors made it even more difficult to move, as the humans were forced to fight in confined spaces. Sparks flew as plasma shots collided with metal, and the sounds of battle echoed through the walls of the alien ship. Meanwhile, Dr. Hayes used her intellect to outsmart the Zorathian AI systems. She hacked into the ship's computers, using the chaos of the battle to her advantage. She managed to disable some of the ship's security systems, creating temporary openings for the team to advance. Despite the intense battle around them, their mission was clear: reach the quantum lattice and destroy it. But the path was treacherous, and the closer they got to their goal, the more dangerous it became. The Zorathian defenses were stronger than ever. They finally reached the heart of the ship, the chamber that housed the quantum lattice. The room was enormous, with walls made of an indestructible alloy. The lattice itself was a massive structure, glowing with an eerie blue light. It pulsed with energy, and Dr. Hayes could feel the raw power emanating from it. Just as they began to prepare to destroy the lattice, the Zorathians launched their final counterattack. The entire ship shook as explosions rocked the hull. The AI-controlled robots and Zorathian soldiers descended on them from all sides, determined to protect the quantum lattice at all costs. With the lattice in sight, the team fought back, but it was clear they were running out of time. The ship's AI had activated its self-destruct sequence, and soon, the entire mothership would explode. They had to act fast. Kane turned to Dr. Hayes, his face grim. "We don't have much time. Are you ready?" Dr. Hayes nodded, her eyes steely with determination. She had spent her entire career working toward this moment, and now, she had to make it count. With a single, decisive move, Dr. Hayes initiated the device that would destabilize the quantum lattice. The room lit up with a blinding flash of light as the lattice began to collapse. The Zorathians' immortality system was falling apart. But just as the lattice started to collapse, a shocking twist occurred: the Zorathians weren't as vulnerable as they seemed. The moment the lattice began to fail, the Zorathians initiated a backup system, one even more dangerous than the original. Humanity's victory might be within reach, but the battle was far from over. The tension had reached a boiling point. Earth's last hope rested on the shoulders of a small group of soldiers and scientists who had infiltrated the Zorathian mothership. The team, led by Lieutenant Marcus Kane and Dr. Alina Hayes, had risked everything to destroy the Zorathians' immortality system. They were moments away from achieving their goal, but even as they prepared for their final strike, the Zorathians were not going down without a fight. The Zorathians, once confident in their invincibility, had quickly realized that their immortality was no longer secure. Desperation set in, and they knew they had one last card to play. Their remaining fleet, led by a massive battle station, launched a devastating orbital bombardment on Earth. The skies above the planet erupted with fire and destruction as Zorathian ships unleashed their full arsenal on the surface. Entire cities were obliterated in an instant, and humanity's defense forces scrambled to respond. From the surface of Earth, it seemed as if the world itself was being torn apart. The skies turned dark with the shadow of Zorathian warships, and deadly beams of energy rained down from above. Massive explosions lit up the cities as the Zorathians fired from their advanced space platforms. Earth's defense forces, which had fought valiantly for months, were stretched to their breaking point. Fighter jets, tanks, and artillery fired at the incoming bombardment, but it was clear that the Zorathians' firepower was overwhelming. The sky was filled with explosions, and the earth trembled under the weight of the attack. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and London were reduced to rubble, and the Zorathians showed no mercy. They had one goal: to crush humanity once and for all. But while the destruction unfolded above, Earth's forces were not giving up. The remnants of Earth's military, including the brave soldiers led by Lieutenant Kane, fought back fiercely, determined to survive, to protect their home. Amidst the chaos, Lieutenant Kane and Dr. Hayes were still focused on their mission to destroy the quantum lattice. The clock was ticking, and they knew that if they didn't succeed in time, Earth would be lost. The Zorathians' AI system was becoming more dangerous by the minute. As their ships rained destruction on Earth, the Zorathians were using their advanced artificial intelligence to analyze and predict human strategies. They had studied humanity's every move, and now, with the information they had gathered, the AI system was making terrifyingly accurate predictions about human behavior. It was clear that the Zorathians were adapting. Their AI could now anticipate human tactics with frightening precision, making it harder for Earth's forces to outmaneuver them. Every time the humans tried to launch a counterattack, the Zorathians were one step ahead. The AI seemed to predict where the human forces would strike and where they would retreat. Every move seemed to be countered almost immediately. In the heart of the Zorathian mothership, Dr. Hayes and Lieutenant Kane were close to achieving their goal. They had destabilized the quantum lattice, but the Zorathians weren't going down without a fight. They had one final move up their sleeve, a backup system that was even more powerful and dangerous than the original quantum lattice. The Zorathians had built this system to protect themselves from the possibility of defeat. If the original lattice was destroyed, the backup system would take over, restoring their immortality. But this system was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was designed to be more than just a safeguard, it was a weapon, a powerful energy field that could wipe out entire fleets in a single blow. And now, it was activated. The moment the backup system came online, the Zorathian fleet shifted its tactics. Suddenly, the orbital bombardment became more concentrated, and Earth's defenses were overwhelmed. The sky turned even darker as a massive wave of energy shot from the Zorathian mothership. It was a powerful, devastating wave that cut through Earth's atmosphere like a blade, slicing through cities and military defenses with terrifying efficiency. The Zorathian AI had predicted the humans' final move, and had already prepared for it. It was clear now that this was no longer just a battle for survival. Earth was fighting against not just the Zorathians' military might, but also their artificial intelligence, which was working at full capacity to predict and counter every move. Back on the surface, humanity's forces were struggling to stay ahead of the Zorathians. Fighter jets screamed through the sky, dodging blasts from Zorathian warships. Tanks rumbled across the battlefield, firing at incoming ships, while infantry soldiers fought valiantly against Zorathian ground troops. But despite their efforts, the Zorathians' technology seemed insurmountable. In the midst of the chaos, Lieutenant Kane's voice crackled through the radio. "Dr. Hayes, we need to move fast. The backup system is going to overload the planet's defenses. We won't survive another strike like that." Dr. Hayes, who had been monitoring the quantum lattice's instability, was working furiously to disable the Zorathian AI systems that were controlling the backup system. Her heart raced as she realized just how close they were to failure. The AI had already anticipated their moves and was adjusting to stop them. Every second counted. Dr. Hayes typed frantically into her console, trying to hack into the Zorathian systems one last time. She had no idea if she could override the AI before it activated the final phase of the backup system, but she had no choice but to try. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Kane and his team were fighting their way through the Zorathian mothership. They had to hold off the alien soldiers long enough for Dr. Hayes to complete her task. But the Zorathians were relentless, and their numbers seemed endless. Kane's rifle roared as he shot down alien after alien, but the situation was becoming desperate. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, Dr. Hayes looked up from her console, a look of shock on her face. "It's working. I've bypassed their AI. But, there's a problem. The backup system is becoming unstable. If I don't stop it in the next 2 minutes, the energy field will overload and destroy everything." Lieutenant Kane's heart sank. "How much time do we have?" 2 minutes. Maybe less. The two of them exchanged a look. This was it. The fate of Earth and the entire human race depended on them finishing this mission. In that moment, as the countdown to destruction began, everything seemed to hang in the balance. Would humanity's final strike be enough to save them, or would they fall before the might of the Zorathians and their unstoppable AI? The final countdown had begun, and no one knew what the next minute would bring. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its final, critical stage. Lieutenant Marcus Kane and Dr. Alina Hayes stood at the heart of the Zorathian flagship, surrounded by the echoes of destruction and chaos. Their mission was simple, at least on the surface: destroy the Zorathian immortality system, destabilized their quantum lattice, and stopped the alien invasion. But in reality, it was far from simple. The fate of the entire human race rested in their hands, and the stakes were higher than ever. The Zorathian flagship loomed over them, an impenetrable fortress of metal and technology. Its massive size dwarfed everything around it. Inside, Dr. Hayes and Lieutenant Kane's team had fought their way through endless corridors, battling wave after wave of Zorathian soldiers and AI-controlled robots. Their energy reserves were low, their bodies bruised, and the realization that they might not make it out alive was starting to sink in. As they neared their final objective, the quantum lattice that powered the Zorathians' immortality system, the tension was palpable. Every step they took felt like it could be their last. Yet, their determination never wavered. They had come this far, and they would finish the job, no matter the cost. The corridor leading to the quantum lattice room was dimly lit, and the hum of Zorathian machinery filled the air. The walls were lined with strange, alien technology, pulsating with energy. Lieutenant Kane's footsteps echoed in the silence as he led the team forward, weapon raised, eyes scanning every corner. Behind him, Dr. Hayes was doing her best to keep up, her face tense with concentration as she worked to decipher the alien systems that would allow them to disable the lattice. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps reached their ears. The Zorathian forces were closing in. The time for stealth had passed. "We need to move faster," Lieutenant Kane barked, turning to Dr. Hayes. "Get that system up and running. We don't have much time." Dr. Hayes nodded, her eyes flashing with determination. "I'm almost there. Just keep them off me for a few more minutes." The team moved quickly, finding cover behind alien consoles as Zorathian soldiers poured into the corridor. The battle that ensued was brutal. The air was thick with the sound of gunfire, explosions, and the screeching of Zorathian war machines. Marcus and his soldiers fought like animals, their lives flashing before their eyes as they took down enemy after enemy. But with every victory came a heavy cost. As the minutes ticked by, the inevitable moment arrived. Lieutenant Kane's team was running out of time, and the Zorathians' forces were overwhelming them. The door to the quantum lattice chamber was in sight, but it seemed so far away. Then, just as they thought they might make it, disaster struck. Bonner, one of the soldiers closest to Lieutenant Kane, fell. A Zorathian shot him in the chest, and he crumpled to the ground. Kane's heart skipped a beat, but there was no time to mourn. They had a mission to complete. "Bonner!" Lieutenant Kane shouted, his voice filled with fury and desperation. He rushed to his fallen comrade, but Bonner shook his head weakly. "Go," Bonner whispered, his breath ragged. "Don't let Earth fall. My life is nothing, compared to the survival of humanity." Tears welled in Kane's eyes, but he knew Bonner was right. The mission had to succeed, no matter the cost. He gave a final salute to his fallen comrade before turning back to Dr. Hayes, who had now reached the control panel. The final strike was ready. But the sacrifice didn't end with Bonner. As they fought their way forward, one by one, more of Kane's soldiers fell. Each death was more painful than the last, but the team pushed forward, motivated by the knowledge that they were fighting not just for their lives, but for the future of humanity. Dr. Hayes worked furiously at the control panel, her fingers flying over the alien symbols as she accessed the quantum lattice system. Sweat poured down her face as she struggled to break through the Zorathian encryption. The Zorathians were relentless, sending wave after wave of soldiers and war machines to stop them. The seconds felt like hours, and each time a blast rang out, it felt like the end was drawing closer. "Just a little longer," Dr. Hayes muttered under her breath. "I need to break the final lock." Lieutenant Kane, bloodied and exhausted, turned back to cover her as the Zorathian forces pressed forward. "Come on, Alina," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We're almost there." But the Zorathians were closing in. The door to the quantum lattice room was only a few meters away, but the team was surrounded. It seemed like the end was near. And then, it happened. One of Kane's soldiers, Sergeant Ortiz, stepped forward with a look of determination on his face. He raised his weapon and turned to face the approaching Zorathians. "I've got this," he said. "Get to the control room. I'll hold them off." Kane tried to protest, but Ortiz gave him a firm look. "It's my turn to make the sacrifice." And with that, Ortiz ran toward the Zorathians, guns blazing. He was cut down almost immediately, but his sacrifice gave Dr. Hayes just enough time to finish her work. The control panel beeped, and the quantum lattice flickered. Dr. Hayes had done it. She had broken the system. Just as Ortiz fell, the quantum lattice came to life, but not in the way the Zorathians had hoped. The energy systems began to destabilize, and the immortality fields that had protected the Zorathians for so long started to collapse. It was the beginning of the end for the alien empire. Kane and Dr. Hayes stood there, staring at the flickering screen, knowing that they had just made history. They had won. But the cost was unimaginable. The deaths of Bonner, Ortiz, and so many others weighed heavily on their hearts. They had given their lives so that humanity could live. Their sacrifices would not be forgotten. "We did it," Dr. Hayes said quietly, her voice choked with emotion. But even as she spoke, the sounds of the Zorathians' defeat were growing louder. Their war machines were beginning to malfunction, their ships lost in space. The tide of battle had turned. The Zorathian Empire, once so powerful and invincible, was crumbling. Humanity had won. Yet, the victory was bittersweet. The cost of the battle had been steep, and the loss of so many brave soldiers would haunt them for the rest of their lives. But as Lieutenant Kane and Dr. Hayes stood together, they knew one thing for sure: their fallen comrades had not died in vain. As the Zorathians' flagship began to implode, Lieutenant Kane looked at Dr. Hayes, his eyes filled with sadness and determination. "We have to make sure that this never happens again. For them," he said, gesturing to the fallen soldiers. "We honor their sacrifice by making sure Earth is never threatened like this again." Dr. Hayes nodded, her eyes reflecting the same resolve. "We will. And we will never forget." The battle may have been won, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. The final blow had been dealt. Earth's forces, having fought with everything they had, finally succeeded in destroying the Zorathian quantum lattice, the source of their immortality. The energy field that had once kept the Zorathians alive forever began to collapse. Their once indomitable forces, which had seemed unbeatable, were now left vulnerable and powerless. For the Zorathians, the reality was shocking. They had been invincible for centuries, their technology far beyond human comprehension. They had seen themselves as rulers of the universe, immortal beings who were untouchable. But now, they were facing the consequences of their arrogance. The quantum lattice, the very system that had given them eternal life, had been destroyed. The Zorathian flagship, once a symbol of their supremacy, began to fall apart. Massive chunks of the ship disintegrated as the energy systems destabilized, sending shockwaves through the fleet. As explosions ripped through the Zorathian ships, Lieutenant Marcus Kane and Dr. Alina Hayes stood on the ruined remains of the flagship, watching as the once proud empire crumbled before their eyes. For a moment, it felt surreal. The Zorathians, who had come to Earth with such overwhelming force, were now reduced to nothing. Their ships, once gleaming with advanced technology, were now nothing more than debris floating in the vastness of space. Earth had won. But even in their victory, there was no celebration. The weight of the battle, the lives lost, and the sacrifices made still hung heavy in the air. The survivors of Earth's forces were battered and exhausted, but they had done it. The alien invaders had been defeated. Back on Earth, the military leaders were still reeling from the enormity of what had just transpired. The Zorathian surrender came swiftly after their defeat. There was no grand negotiation, no dramatic speech. The Zorathians, who had once believed themselves to be the dominant force in the universe, were now forced to face the consequences of their actions. They had no choice but to surrender. As Earth's leaders looked on, they realized that this was more than just a victory. It was a new beginning. The Earth had shown the universe that no matter how advanced the technology, no matter how powerful the enemies, humanity's will to survive was stronger. The fight for survival had not only protected their planet but had also given Earth a place in the galactic community, one that they had never before dreamed of. But the victory came at a great cost. The stories of soldiers like Bonner, Ortiz, and many others would be passed down through history, their bravery and sacrifice becoming the foundation of a new era. Humanity had been tested in ways they never thought possible, and they had come out victorious. As the Zorathians surrendered and the Earth's forces began to regroup, Lieutenant Kane stood alone on the deck of the command ship. The final battle had been won, but the faces of the fallen soldiers haunted him. He thought of Bonner's final words, of Ortiz's heroic sacrifice, and of all those who had given their lives so that humanity could survive. Dr. Alina Hayes joined him on the deck, her expression just as somber. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, watching as the last remnants of the Zorathian fleet drifted into the void of space. It was hard to grasp the magnitude of what they had just done. They had not only saved Earth, they had changed the course of history. "We did it," Dr. Hayes said, her voice quiet and filled with both relief and grief. "But at what cost?" Kane didn't answer immediately. He had no words that could make sense of the loss, the pain, and the sacrifices. He had seen too many good men and women die in the heat of battle, and the weight of their deaths would stay with him forever. But in the end, they had done it. Humanity had faced the ultimate test and had won. As Earth began to rebuild and the news of their victory spread across the globe, something strange happened. The ruins of the Zorathian fleet were still floating in space, now a silent reminder of the once mighty empire. It was there, among the debris, that a figure appeared. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, a shadow among the stars. But then, as the figure grew clearer, it became apparent that it was no ordinary being. This figure, cloaked in a dark, shimmering fabric, moved with an eerie grace through the wreckage of the Zorathian fleet. Its features were hidden in the shadows, but there was something unmistakably menacing about it. The figure stood still for a moment, gazing out at the remnants of the Zorathian ships, before turning and vanishing into the depths of space. Who was this mysterious figure? Was it another enemy, perhaps a new threat that had been waiting for the right moment to strike? Or was it something else entirely, a sign of humanity's next challenge? The answer was unclear, but one thing was certain: the victory over the Zorathians had only marked the beginning of a much larger story. The universe was vast, and if Earth had learned anything, it was that there would always be more battles to fight. Humanity had won, but the cost of their victory was not just in lives lost. It was in the knowledge that there would always be more enemies, more challenges, and more unknowns. But with each victory, they would grow stronger, more united, and more capable of facing whatever lay ahead. The mysterious figure, the new threat, or perhaps a new ally, had left a chilling reminder: the galaxy was far from peaceful, and Earth's place within it was only just beginning to unfold. As Earth celebrated its hard-earned victory, the stars above seemed to whisper a warning. The story of humanity's fight for survival was not over, it was only just beginning. The last image we see is of Lieutenant Kane and Dr. Hayes, standing together, watching the stars above, knowing that the universe was far bigger than they had ever imagined. And with the silent approach of this new figure, they understood that their fight for survival had only just begun.